It's easy to look around and notice everything wrong in your city. In this podcast by Every Neighborhood Partnership, join Grace and Andrew as they invite friends, activists, pastors, leaders, and city workers to discover what's good in the neighborhood. Join us for insightful conversations that will encourage you to see your city and its people in a new way.
Welcome to today's episode. We are continuing our series of A Good Neighbor and talking about the theme of hospitality. What is hospitality? What does it take to be hospitable? We have a business owner, Nicole from State Farm, and a pastor, Simon Biasell of Big Red Church, both as friends, and I've gotten to see them in action, creating space for others. And so we kind of talk about what motivates them to do that. Some of their learning lessons, the ways that they have failed in trying to host people, and just a lot of great examples of what does it mean to be hospitable and how we can create the community that we all actually want to be a part of. So you'll enjoy today, look forward to it, and we'll get started.
Well, hello. We are here on What's Good in the Neighborhood. I'm Grace.
I'm Andrew.
And we are joined today by two friends that live here in our actual neighborhood of our new building, Fresno High. But we are in our series still, A Good Neighbor. So we're talking today about what it means to be hospitable, to reach out to the person who not only lives across the street from you or next door, but in your general vicinity, in your neighborhood, how you can be an active participant in what's going on. So we're joined today by Simon Biasell. Did I do it?
Yeah, you did.
Good. And Nicole Casetech? Yeah?
Casetech.
One for two. We are joined by both of them, Simon and Nicole. And welcome, you guys. Thanks so much for being on with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about yourselves, where you live, and how long you've been in the Fresno area.
I'll kick it off. Nicole Casetech. Again, I have a State Farm office on Van Ness and Shields. I've been in the Fresno High Tower neighborhood since 2018, but moved to Fresno in 2010. And I think having a platform and being a business owner allows me to be a little bit more connected. And it also doesn't hurt that State Farm's motto is literally like a good neighbor. So
it was so ingrained in my head that when I thought about this episode, I thought, Nicole, State Farm has won. Their advertising has won.
Good.
So Simon Biasell. I'm the pastor of the Big Red Church, and I've lived in this neighborhood for 15 years. We lived in one house that had one bathroom, and then we had two kids. And we took us a year to find another house that, it's hard to find a house that has two bathrooms in this neighborhood. But we're very committed to living in this neighborhood. And so, 10 in one house and 5 in the other.
So good. I love it. Well, thank you guys so much for being with us today. We just kind of wanted to, as we think about hospitality, your neighbor and your neighborhood, what's inspiring you as you think about your own specific place, and then also just what drives you in general to create spaces of connection in your neighborhood, or to even show hospitality. Or maybe somebody even wants to take on the question of what does it mean even to be hospitable in your space and place?
Yeah, I thought about this morning as we were running through things. And to me, being hospitable is being warm and welcoming, creating a space where people don't feel excluded or uninvited. And so I think with the career that I've chosen, it allows for education and just bringing people in and advising them. But I think some of the work that Simon and I have done and some other community groups that I've been a part of really lends itself well to that just warm, welcoming connection that we should have with our neighbors and neighborhood.
Yeah, so hospitality, I love the idea of it. I love practicing it. My dad's side of the family is Italian-American, and opening up your home and having people around the table is so much a part of how I was raised and the culture. And then also being somebody in the church, there's a lot of this thought about what does it mean to be welcoming, but I think hospitality is more than just being welcoming. Hospitality is...
Because, what's the difference?
So I would say welcoming is you open the door and let somebody in. Hospitality is anticipating people's needs and then also being willing to accommodate them. And this is something that I would say my profession, we don't always do really well, especially the accommodation piece. We are really good at opening the door. I love that anybody can walk into a church and sit down on Sunday, but hospitality is really making space for those people and their specific needs and us accommodating to what they need.
Maybe give me a context of like, what are some of the things, okay, if you're motivated by hospitality, you want to be a good neighbor, what are some of the things you have done? Like, I think that's why I thought of you both as you literally are not just saying, we care about hospitality. Like, you're doing I see you at stuff. You're creating stuff for people to go to. So, like, Nicole, give me, what are some of the projects, some of the organizations you've been a part of? Yeah.
Well, I think, Andrew, you and I initially got connected because I did a community garden at Heaton Elementary. Yeah. And then I think a couple weeks later, the pandemic hit, and you guys were doing food giveaways at elementary schools. And so I began volunteering. And so that's an example of just being connected and creating spaces and healthy environments, gardening at schools with kids. And then I was also part of the Tower Neighborhood Association, which really engaged community members and voices as we've looked at the Tower specific plan. I'm now on what was formerly the Tower Neighborhood or Tower District Marketing Committee. It's now Tower District Business Association. And we do things like the Mardi Gras Parade, the Pooch Parade. So these are just examples of ways to get people out in the community. I think knowing your neighbor also creates safer communities and just an opportunity to get out and visit and enjoy, and I think it brings a lot of fulfillment. But yeah, a few of those neighborhood things. Yeah,
and I think before we started recording, you're also saying like that's actually something that you personally enjoy, and then you found a career that actually like allows you to do it and helps even support it.
Yeah, I mean, literally our motto is like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. And State Farm provides financial support for agents to get involved in the community. So a lot of the things that I do is subsidized by the organization. So it also makes it really easy to invest not only my dollars, but utilize State Farm's dollars as well.
That's awesome.
How about for you, Simon? What are some of the things that have come out of your this is like, I'm going to be a different style of pastor, of leader, of church. And I know some of these things have been in the church, some have been outside of the church context.
Yeah, so for the church, a group of us started a community 10 years ago called Woven Community, and it was really geared towards folks who grew up in the church, but felt really excluded from the church for who they were, what they believed. And so they left the church, and we were this place that folks could re-enter back into community, that there was something that they missed being a part of a faith community. And we were able to experiment, well, what can this look like in a place where churches excluded these folks before? How can we make them feel included? Whether that's their beliefs, their sexual orientation. So that was a big part. How do we make people feel like they belong, and how do we create this community for everybody? An amazing opportunity that I had. I'm no longer a member of the board, but I used to be a board member of Fresno Interdenominational Refugee Ministry. And talk about hospitality is creating hospitality for new residents in Fresno who've left horrific situations in their homeland, and this organization firm welcomes them in. So,
like Hmong, Russian,
Afghanistan, Syrian. So those are kind of two big ways. And then I would say, maybe specifically for this conversation, the Fresno High neighborhood is this neighborhood, like I said, that a lot of people, like, I don't know if we would feel like we belong in any other part of Fresno like we do in our neighborhood. And so love the friendships and relationships that we've built. And so Nicole and I have, and others, shout out to Michelle Wong, have tried to create opportunities for us to be in space all together, to see our friends as well as maybe people who are new to the neighborhood to come and join us and celebrate as well.
So, like, what does that mean? What does that look like?
So we've done 3 so far, and one was before we got our neighborhood park, Trolley Park, and
Whoop, whoop.
Whoop whoop, Trolley Park. For me, I would drive down Van Ness, and we've got this grassy median on Van Ness. In a city that has so few green spaces, here we have this green space that is completely underutilized. And I thought, what if we threw a party on this green space that we do have? And so I knew Nicole, but we weren't close. But I probably more knew of Nicole and the way that she served our neighborhood and belonged to our neighborhood, and said, what if we threw a party on the median? And so then that kicked off these series that we've done now in the park.
And they are so fun.
So fun.
The best.
And just, I mean, like, it's one of those places that I think people, even as this park you're talking about, for folks that don't know, it's what they call a pocket park. So it's not this huge acreage.
No.
I don't even know the full acreage. It's probably like a third.
Not an
a
acre,
third of an
yeah.
acre, if that. And so it's very small, and people are just like, oh, that's dumb. No one's going to use it. It is so activated as a space. And then you guys have reactivated it. I mean, hundreds of people, kids running everywhere. I mean, it is so fun to see, what people are like, oh, no one cares about this. No, people are invested, people care. And I think you guys have created space for people to get to know one another, get to know people around them, right? Yeah.
Well, and especially post-pandemic. I mean, like, so isolated, 2020. Most people, I mean, some are just now feeling comfortable to come back out. So we've been seeing a lot of isolation and loneliness from that. So how have you seen people re-engage post or after COVID? What has that been like? Is there we know that there's a lot of people that are showing up to these events, but what's being told to you from the community? Are people, are they excited? Are they nervous to get back involved? What's the feeling?
Yeah, I think the first big example of the community coming back out was with Porch Fest. And that was born out of...
What is Porch Fest?
So Porch Fest is the best day of the year in Fresno.
Amen.
It's where porches in the Tower and Fresno High neighborhood, or homeowners and renters, open up their homes, their front porches to artists, particularly musical artists, but sometimes there's acrobatics and other things. And it's just this day of music and arts and community and joy, and it's really, really fun. And that was born out of the pandemic and people not having an outlet to enjoy arts and music. Jeremy Hofer and a few people really kicked that off for the community. I've been a part of the planning committee for the last couple of years, but I think that was the first moment where you saw the hunger in people to just be out and in their communities again. And the feedback was amazing and overwhelming. And we need to have this more than just once a year type of reaction. And so I think it primed some of the activities that Simon and I have done because we recognized how necessary it was.
I also think there's a lot of people in our neighborhood that live in their front yard or in other people's front yard, and because it is kind of a tight-knit community, we are just naturally running into each other. So I think it happens on a day-to-day basis, but then to have specific events where people can come together shows that whether you're an extrovert or even an introvert, to have a big space where you're surrounded by your neighbors feels really good. And I don't know if that was something that didn't exist before COVID or if it stoked the fire,
But I do think, Grace, to also address your question, I think it's easy for people to kind of stay home. We've got technology at our fingertips, social media, so it's like this false sense of connection. I think to be connected and to commune with neighbors in your community, you do have to make an effort. It's not just going to happen. It requires you to get out there, be mindful, be intentional, and I would say it's work, right? I mean, so I think
because you've already mentioned committees, meetings, planning, budget. Like none of this happens. Overnight.
Yeah. So I think there is an element of the effort it takes to be connected, and perhaps that makes it a little bit difficult hurdle for you to get involved. Yeah,
we had a lot of conversation leading up to, I think, all three of the parties that we did about why would somebody want to come to this and why would they feel comfortable with it. It was important for me that I reached out to a diverse group of people because I didn't want people to think like, oh, that's some like Christian thing going on and that's not for me. And so being intentional about that as well. How do we make sure that everybody feels welcome to this?
As we talk about this neighborhood, it feels idealistic and like a dreamland.
It is a little bit though.
So, I mean, we've talked honestly and often about the problems and the challenges facing our city, from systemic issues to just even as you mentioned, Simon, the neighborhoods are designed differently, so they are walkable. They are like you're going to run into people because the way they're designed. It's not a cul-de-sac suburban environment. We know our other neighbors don't feel the same sense of welcome. Like, what have you seen or experienced that? Or what are the dreams or I wish the city was oriented this way. I wish the church cared about this. I wish businesses thought differently. Like, what do you wish would happen in terms of being a hospitable community, a hospitable city?
Yeah, I mean, I think to name some historical context of why it is why our neighborhood is the way it is. So we are the one neighborhood that is predominantly white in south of Shields, and a higher socioeconomic, higher education level. And if you look on the deeds of our houses, there's covenants that it used to exclude certain races and ethnicities to live here. And so when my grandfather moved to Fresno after World War II, he lived on the other side of fruit, because in my home, Italian couldn't buy the house that we live in. And obviously, as well as Latinos and Blacks and African Americans, Armenians, Asian Americans, so on and so forth. And so there was intentionality to keep people of color out. And I'll just name also that the Big Red Church, that we are this beacon for progressive acceptance. The reason why they moved to this neighborhood, they used to be downtown on Divisadero. They moved because of white flight, and they wanted to move north. They set the trend for every other church to move north. So there is a history of that, and I think we are working against that history.
Nicole, how about for you? I mean, what would be the dream of, as you talk to business owners, as you think about the value add it's been to you, what would be your hope or wish?
Yeah, I think creating awareness around the privilege that we have in our neighborhood. And while we are grateful for it, I think being mindful that other neighborhoods don't experience that. And so making sure that we reach out, advocate, provide the level of support, coming alongside other communities where there needs to be more business development, needs to be more support. So, yeah, we can cherish our bubble, our pocket, but also recognize that we are in a position to help other areas.
There's a group of us, the Fresno High residents, that took a bike tour with Kyle Schmidt, and I call him Luffy. I can't remember what his real name is.
I only know him as Luffy.
One of their esteemed board members who has a grown-up name, not Luffy. And we took a bike tour from Trolley Park down to South Tower. And the idea was, the way I think about it is, the Tower district is 3 siblings. Tower, the famous middle child, and Fresno High, that maybe is the favorite child that gets taken care of. We get a park and we don't even ask for one. And then you've got South Tower that has been advocating for a park for I think a decade or more. Finally, it's breaking ground and is happening after a lot of advocating. Not to mention all the industrial zoning around that neighborhood. And so for those of us who live in this neighborhood, we should care about our siblings, and we should care about the economic components of the Tower neighborhood that makes this neighborhood so great, and then also make sure that we are lifting up our neighbors, our friends, our residents in South Tower as well, and that their fight is our fight.
If we could zoom out a little bit, 3,000 feet, what if you were chatting with a friend who is just not sure, maybe they're not extroverted and they don't know necessarily how to get involved in their neighborhood, but they want to be more connected? What would be some just some first steps that you would encourage them with of, getting involved, not even necessarily at the level you're at, Nicole, of planning and budgeting and all the things, but just getting to know your neighbors? What would be your first encouragement to them?
I mean, it sounds so simple, but just going next door and across the street and making introductions. It's such an easy in, right? Hi, I'm your neighbor.
Yes.
Just wanted to take a moment to introduce myself to you. We had, with the Tower Neighborhood Association, this kind of binder, this neighborhood binder, where you could identify just who on the block is handy at certain things or who on the block has certain tools. So not everybody on the block needs to own a chainsaw. So even connecting with, hey, what resources does this neighborhood have or this street have? And how can we pool resources instead of all of us having to financially support something that we may use once a year?
I love that. We haven't really touched on that either, but the different resources and assets that can be found if you just said hi to the person across.
Yeah, I had a perfect example of that. Neighbor down, not even on my street, down over, but he walks walks all the time. So he's always in the neighborhood. And we started talking. The guy's like a machinist, super good with his hands. We're talking about his house, what he's working on. He's like, I need a table saw though. And I got gifted a badass table saw, $2,000 table saw. So super nice. He just started drooling when he saw this thing, and it is very nice. And he was doing a house project, and then so I went over to his house, and he was pulling up a deck. And so he had half of the wood, maybe a quarter of it was rotted. But I'm like, what are you doing with that wood? He's like, I don't need it. So he used my table saw to build a bunch of his house projects, and then I got all his wood. That was my garden boxes because
nice.
I just cut off all the bad stuff and then built. I was like, this is neighbor. We both. I had something that just gonna sit there in my garage. He literally had this wood in his backyard. I'm like, if you get to know somebody, this is the best. Both of us came out, way ahead, and we connected, and we're, I still wave.
Yes.
So, but it's great.
Yeah.
I would say it does take investment. Real relationships does take investment. And so, yes, maybe it's easier for extroverts than it is for introverts. But if we can all push ourselves to take a step, and there are great things in my section of the neighborhood, they've been doing this progressive dinner, holiday progressive dinner for like 50 years,
Wow.
I think.
That's
And so like that, like Nicole and I are patting ourselves on the back, but like this kind of community has been happening for decades. And it's a great way to, like somebody just drops off a flyer and said on your doorstep, and would you like to be one of the hosts? And if not, sign up for a dish to bring. So like you can be an introvert and drop a note off on somebody's stoop.
I think you bring up a good point, though, that it is an art. It's an art to neighbor. And maybe there's generations that are losing that, And so being able to learn from the last generation of how they connected with people before the social media age that we're in today, on my old street near the college, every Halloween, they don't go to each other's house. They don't stay at their houses. They go to one person's yard. They put out a long table. They all drink wine. They put out a basket of chocolate so they don't have to talk to the kids. And they all eat dinner. So everyone's watching them eat dinner. And they're like, oh, yeah, get some candy. But they're all together. And you can tell they're best friends. And they've lived on the same block. And they've been doing it forever. And that, I think that there's a idea there that it's like the people on my block could be my built-in friends, the people that I see every single day. And so that mindset shift of like the person across the street isn't a stranger or somebody to be feared or avoided, but somebody that I could be a built-in friend for me. There's like something has to shift there for us to get to that place of like, oh, this could change the way that I neighbor.
You mentioned that it's an art. Have you had any failures? I think
Yes.
Because I think part of it, we just had in one of my friend groups, somebody tried to do a gathering, right? And like no one came. It was like two neighbors out of like 20 came. But it's like they took a risk, and they put themselves out there. They said they're going to host people, but they also got people that were interested, just, they're out of town or whatever. But like, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you like actually really hurt somebody because you didn't think of them in a way that felt hospitable, right? So any kind of stories of failure that you go, yeah, that was a learning lesson for me.
I think the first time that we did the party on the grassy median, we made flyers and we started to pass them out, and we realized that the flyers were only in English, and just realizing what that literally communicates, and also unintentionally communicates of who is invited to this. And so being more thoughtful with that was definitely a fail.
And also relying almost entirely on social media to spread the word in that first party. And so recognizing that we needed more flyers, more signage, because there were so many people that either after the fact or later on in the party said, what is this? How come we didn't hear about it? So yeah, engaging a little bit more than just social media and the way a Gen Z or millennial would communicate.
Right. And maybe another fail that I should, my flyers that I did put up with ugly blue tape, I got a lot of ridicule.
Oh my goodness.
I think they passed some zoning laws on how to put up flyers after I did.
What's wrong with the blue tape? I would think then you don't
practical.
Then you don't take off any varnish or.
Oh my
I was told I was not allowed to put up any flyers for this last one.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
That's so funny.
I have a question. So hospitality with being a neighbor, hospitality works, or I think of hospitality when you own the space, you invite somebody over to your space. But as a neighbor, this is not my neighborhood. This neighborhood doesn't belong to me. Maybe I've been here longer. Maybe I know a lot of people in this neighborhood, but it doesn't make it my neighborhood. So I wonder where does hospitality and neighboring interact?
Where does hospitality and neighboring interact?
Like, so, and maybe I'll just name, I think sometimes there's this mindset, I think from Christians that, oh, when I move into a neighborhood, I'm going to be the people. I'm going to be the one inviting them in. Like I'm doing the outreach / colonialism, and we forget that this neighborhood doesn't belong to me.
Oh, I was thinking of when you're talking about it, the spaces, it's so much just like like any kind of service oriented person, they want to serve. They actually get energy and life from doing that thing, right? So the exact opposite is the hard part, to actually be served and actually, to go to somebody's house and be like, I'm a guest in your house. That can be like very uncomfortable for somebody to like give of their extra, or even when you go, oh, like they're giving of their like minimal, like they don't have a lot to give, but they're giving of it to you. That's a very hard place to be in. And it's also comfortable for me to be like, I think of some of the neighborhood spots I've been in where it's like in the backyard of somebody's house, we have an amazing spread of food, but it's not my space, so I'm uncomfortable. And so can I just relax there and be, that's how they feel when they come to my house,
right.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think maybe just being mindful and respectful of what, like you mentioned, Simon, they've had this progressive dinner for the last 50 years. People have been neighboring and hospitable long before you and I came on the scene. And so respecting some of the traditions and prior connections is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that hospitality inherently should include humility. And so you should be able to listen, like hear your neighbor and recognize that they probably have more to offer you than you have to offer them. If it's longevity or history or resources or wisdom, it could be tangible or intangible. But I think that's one of our values here at EMP is that we wouldn't be people that go in with the solution or a savior, but we'd be people that go in with how can we mutually collaborate to see the best possible outcome. And so I think it's almost giving people the benefit of the doubt that we all want a space where we all thrive together and we all flourish, as opposed to power structures that can oppress or hold each other down. When we moved into Fresno High, there was a family that had been there for 40 years, and she was grandma. I won't say her name because she lives around the corner, but literally she owned the block, quote unquote. And the reason why she did is because she was the most curious person. I felt like I was getting interviewed,
You're on the hot seat.
Yes, exactly. Where did you come from? How many kids do you have? She wants to know everything about me, not because maybe she's nosy, but not because she's nosy, but because she wants to include us in her block. That's the whole point, right? And so, I think that requires a humility on our part to not be we're coming in with, the best of the best. Instead, we come in because we want to be part of Grandma, I'll call her Sally, Grandma Sally's block, So, I think that's the difference. I don't know.
Yeah. Another thing to just acknowledge is the Fresno High home tours that have been going on for years and years. And that's another great way that preceded my residency here of getting to know your neighbor and getting to know, literally opening up your home to raise money for the high school.
Yeah. And I think it's soon, December
2nd.
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. We can link that in. Anything you're dreaming up for the next 6 months, year, as you think about, being a good neighbor?
I think recently, having joined the board of the Tower District Business Association, just more events and opportunities for community to connect. We just did a new event, Taste and Cheers, which we partnered with local breweries and local businesses on Olive. You kind of asked about a failure. I wouldn't describe it as a failure, but we certainly didn't have the turnout that we had hoped for. But we have begun something new, and so that is important. But I think from the business association standpoint, just creating more events and more connection on a community level, but even on a business owner to business owner level, how can we support each other and create more opportunities for growth and to thrive? So I think that is big on that end of it. I think from a professional standpoint and personal standpoint, continuing to partner with Simon and Michelle and the other community members to have these community parties throughout the year, because people love them. They don't feel like work. We're getting up and putting lanterns and stringing streamers, and it's just so fun.
Yeah. So I've been at the Big Red Church now for just over a year, and one of the real draws in that position for me was that it is right in the smack dab middle of our neighborhood, and dreaming up how to make it be this hub for our neighborhood. And we've got this fellowship hall that my idea is I want this to be the community center of our neighborhood, that whether you show up on Sunday morning or not, no matter what you believe, that this is a space that our neighborhood can use. And so I came in hot, telling the church, like, we're going to transform this space into a space that people want to use. And one of the great oldies in our church said that the blueprints actually it's not called a fellowship hall, it's called a community center.
Oh, wow.
And
Cool.
so my dream is to really transform that into the Fresno High Community Center.
That's great. And I think even as to throw in on EMP's end, we are in this new building. We were able to host the Tower Business Association. I think last week they were here. Cary Baseball League had a meeting here this last week. So I think, like you said, even using our spaces, they don't need to be our spaces. They can be community spaces. So it's really good.
Thank you guys so much for sharing. And honestly, you guys are doing the thing, like we said, and also learning from the people who came before you. So thank you guys so much for sharing the tips and the tricks of the trade. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for your hearts for this neighborhood. Thanks for really creating space for others.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to find out more about EMP, you can visit us at everyneighborhood.org or follow us at EMP Fresno. Every Neighborhood Partnership and this podcast exists to activate, equip, mobilize, and transform here in Fresno and beyond. If you liked what you've heard, please share and review what's good in the neighborhood wherever you listen. We'll see you next time.